Welcome back. In this video, we are going to check out our first application, which is going to be a Hello World application. And that is a common thing to do once you start a new programming language, that the first thing you do is to write Hello World, or at least to write a program that prints out Hello World. And that's what we're gonna do. So you are going to see how to get started with Visual Studio and how to get started with C#. So once you have opened up Visual Studio, this is what you should see. At least that's the default interface. And in order to create a new project, you have multiple options. One of them is that you go to File, Start Window, and you see this screen again that we have seen before. And here you can create a new project by just clicking on Create a New Project. And then here you can select the type of project that you want to go with. Before we do so, I want to quickly show you the other way. So you can go to File, New, and then Project. And that's the other way to open up this Create a New Project window. Here you can choose from different types of project templates. So as you can see, there is the console app.NET Core, there's the console app.NET Core for other programming languages. So you can see here as well C#, and this one is for Visual Basic. So the first one is the one that we're going to use, but there are plenty more, and these are depending on what we have installed, so what kind of package and components we have installed. And we're going to use different project templates throughout the course, but the one that we're going to use most is going to be this console app, because it allows us to quickly test our code and write some simple code in order to understand the basics and go from there. All right, so just press next, and then you can select a project name here. And here, for example, I'm going to choose Hello World as the project name, and it's going to be one name. You can see the solution name is the same, and then you can also select the location where you want this to be stored. All right, so the project will be stored in users, then as source repos. But if you want to change that, you can just browse to the folder that you want to do it with. All right, and then you can just press create, and that will then create a new project for you. This can take a little while because it sets up everything that we need in order to go from there. All right, so there we are. This is our Hello World program, and you can see there is a bunch of code already there. And I'm going to scroll in a little bit so that it looks a little bigger. So how you can do that is by pressing Control and then scrolling forward. If you want to make it smaller, then scroll backward while pressing Control, or while holding Control. And you can also just enter a value here at the bottom left, or select a predefined value here. As I stated earlier, this course was created or recorded with Visual Studio 2017. So there things looked a little differently. And to get here, you had to do some other steps, or it looks slightly differently. It was the same steps, but it just looks a little different. That's why I want to show you in this video as well how it looked in 2017, because that's how it's going to look, or how we're going to set up projects in the videos. But we could just do as we have just done in the last 2 minutes, where you just went from File, New Project, and then you saw this screen here, which is the only real difference in terms of the looks of the screens, because they just tried to make it a little more 2019 in terms of the UI and the design. You go to File, New Project. And in case the start page doesn't show up for you, then you definitely have to go this route. So File, New Project, or Control-Shift-N. So let's do that. Let's open it up. In this new project window, you can select different project types. So you could go ahead and create Xamarin Forms. If you have installed Xamarin, you could create a console app, a WPF app, and so forth. This highly depends on which add-ons you have installed in Visual Studio. So some of them might not be available in your case, but the one that we want to create is the console app.NET framework. If that should not be available in your case, you can also use console app.NET Core. So let's go ahead and use .NET framework, give it a name, and I'm just gonna call this one Hello World. Then I press OK, and this will create a new project, and this can take a little while. By the way, you might notice two differences to the Visual Studio 2017 version in your 2019 version. So first of all, when creating a new project, you only have using system up there. You don't have all of the other using namespaces there, which are just not required, or which they decided to get rid of because usually people don't need all of them straight away. And once you need a specific namespace, you will just add it later on. And another thing that you might notice is that you can see here 0 references on top of class program and 0 references on top of static void main. And that is a new feature which just indicates how many references a specific code piece, in this case code block of a class or a code block of a method, and what classes and methods are will be discovered and explained in the course later on, but it just indicates how often a specific code is used somewhere else or called somewhere else. And that is something that is useful, but will not be visible in the videos, but it will be visible in your code. So if you use Visual Studio 2019, you will see this. So please don't be confused by it. It's really just an additional information that Visual Studio 2019 provides to us. All right, before we look into anything else, let's look into this code that we have here. So you can see there are 15 lines of code automatically generated for us without us having typed a single keystroke. So what you can see here are 5 lines where they start with using and then system. This means that we are using a certain namespace. So in this case, we're using the namespace system. Then you see the keyword namespace here as well on line 7, which is hello world, and that's the name of our project. So when you create a new project, you create a new namespace. Now system collections, generic, and so forth, all of those are namespaces, so pieces of code that we can use, and they can contain loads of code, thousands of lines of code, which allow us to use their functionality. So once we add using and then the namespace name, and of course a semicolon at the end of the line, we can use its functionality. And that is super powerful because you don't have to write all the code by yourself. There is plenty of code that you can already use. And this is super important because in programming, you're trying to reuse as much as possible and not write everything from scratch and build the whole system from scratch. Okay, so we have these 5 lines using system and so forth, which are a little grayed out. That is because we are currently not using them. As soon as we are actually using their functionality, they will be as light as the code that we have here. As you can see, there's a slight difference. This is white and this is gray. We will see in a second what that means. But first, let's have a look at our namespace hello world that we have here. Our namespace hello world is our project, and it contains a class in this case, which is called program. Now you can see that it is within the curly brackets. So everything that is within those curly brackets is part of the namespace hello world. The same goes for this class program. So we have this class which is called program, and it also has these curly brackets. So everything that is between those curly brackets, so between the opening and closing curly brackets, is part of this class program. And then we have the static void main, which is a method which has the same structure. So we also have the curly brackets here. So within this method, we can write the code that should be executed once our program starts. This main method here is the starting point of our program, which pretty much means that once you start your program, the code that is in here will be executed. And that is a great point for us to start our first line of code, because other lines of code will not be executed straight away. So in here, what we can simply do is we can use the console.write line, and in here we can enter the code that we want to write onto the console. Now you will see what a console is in a minute if you have never seen a console before. So in here, I'm just going to enter hello world, and please just follow along with me. And then I'm going to explain it a little more once we see what's actually happening. So we have this one line that we have written ourselves, which will write something onto the console. That's the idea behind this line. And this is just a predefined piece that is within our namespace called system. And as you can see, now it's not grayed out anymore. Now it's at the full brightness here. So using system is brighter than all of the other ones because we're not using them. Now you could of course reduce your code and get rid of all of those lines because we're not using any of them. We're just using system directly. Okay. Now, if we run this program, it will write it onto the console. So console write line will be executed, but our program will be shut down straight away. You might have seen it just for a second there where it said hello world in that console. Now, in order to keep our console awake or open, we need to keep it busy. And in order to do so, we can just say read, which will execute a reading functionality, which waits for us to type something in or enter a key. Okay, so let's try it again. Let's run our code. And you can see our console opens up. Here we see hello world. And then you see this little line, which indicates that the program is waiting for us to enter something. So once I press any key and press enter, my program will close. I could have also entered the whole text in there. So let's do it again. Let's enter something, press enter, and our program closes. Now the cool thing is that you can also see that with an exe file. So with an executable file, you can now execute a file that you have created by doing what you've done. So let's right click onto Hello World and open folder and file explorer. This will open up this file explorer. So in here, I can go to the bin folder, debug folder, and there I will find my hello world exe file, my executable file. So let's open it up. And as you can see, it also opens this program. So now you have already written a program which does everything that we have created in our code. Now, of course, you can see that in your hello world folder, there are other files as well. For example, your program.cs. And that is exactly the file that we are currently working in here in Visual Studio. So that's the program.cs file, and CS stands for C#. So this is our C# file. All right, so now as a little challenge for you, please go ahead and write one line of code which says hello and then your name. So in my case, it would be hello Dennis. And that should be printed onto the console, or it should be written onto the console. So please try that. All right, I hope you tried it. So what we need here is console.writeLine and then hello Dennis in my case. And we always need to finish our statements with a semicolon. That's something that I have not stated here while I was writing this line of code, but it's super important that we have to enter this. And also what you see here with all of those curly brackets, we're going to go a lot more into detail what that means. We're going into detail what writeLine is. It's a method, but you have not covered methods yet, and we are going to do that. We're going to check out what this console is and so forth. So you're going to learn all of that. So don't worry about that. We are just getting the first project out there so that you see that what you are doing is actually creating something already. Okay, once you've done that, let's run our code. And you can see it says hello world and it says hello Dennis. All right, so that's our first little project and I hope you enjoyed it. In the next video, we are going to check out the user interface a little more because I just jumped over that. I just showed you directly how to create this little program. And I also didn't go too much into detail what this void main means and so forth, except for that it's the starting point of our project. But no worries, we're going to cover everything step by step. All right, so I'd say let's go to the next video where we're going to learn a little more about Visual Studio and its interface. So see you there.